Hey, future millionaires, this is Phil from the Next Chapter team. And in this article review, we're going to go over 10 common money habits of self-made millionaires. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this video where we go over 10 common habits of self-made millionaires. You're going to pick up some tips. You're going to hopefully take advantage of them. And in about 5-10 years, you're going to ping me and say, hey, I'm a millionaire. But before we jump into the article review, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with your friends who are also going to be future millionaires. Okay, the first habit that a lot of self-made millionaires are employing and keeping to on a monthly, annual basis, and probably for 20, 30 years straight, is they're avoiding debt. And what we're talking about here is some of that consumer debt. They don't live on credit cards. Most of them don't even have car loans, or they have one car loan and they paid it off and they're riding that car till it dies. Then they saved up and bought the next car in cash. They probably bought a used car. And they also avoid leases. So again, first up, the article calls out that most self-made millionaires that replied to the survey avoided debt like the plague because it stopped them. It held them back from doing what they wanted with their money, enjoying it, investing it, and paying off their mortgage. Next up, when it came to big purchases, number 2, they would buy cars. They would first off keep them for a long term and ride them until they basically fell apart. And then on top of that, they would pay the car off. They would not do leases. They weren't chasing leases. Why? Because they were avoiding those payments. You think about those average car payments, well north over $500 to $700 nowadays. The average car payment, that type of thing is slowing you down. Over $500 a month is more than $6,000 a year. Those are dollars that you'd be investing or paying off on your mortgage or investing for yourself or saving for a big purchase. So they avoided these debts. So again, for number 2, they purchased cars in cash and they did not do leases, or if they bought a car and they had a loan, they paid it off and they rode it till it died. The number 3 item, I love it. I'm a big fan of this. Having an emergency fund. Emergency fund is pinnacle. So the article called out financial experts suggest that you have 3 to 6 months, and a lot of these self-made millionaires completely agreed. One of the things that they did was they at least had 1 month, paid off all their debts, and then they focused on building up from 1 month to 3, and then from 3 to 6. I've actually known some millionaires who have a whole 1-year emergency fund. Not kidding. It's wild, but they built it up over time. And again, they wanted that shelter because when an emergency happens, they want to be able to handle it and not have to deal with taking out high interest loans or putting balances on credit cards that have interest rates between 19 and even up to 29%, depending on the state. So the emergency fund helped them stay out of debt and helped them stay in a position to build wealth over time. That's right, long-term wealth over time. The number 4 item, and this one's not a surprise at all, is they invested consistently. Because they had an emergency fund, they avoided debts, they probably had a good, healthy spending plan or a budget. And so they knew exactly how much they can invest. And they invested consistently over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. This really builds up. I know in the intro I mentioned over 5 and 10 years, but it's more likely 10 to 15 years, maybe even 20 years, depending on your income. But you know what? So what? Being on that roadmap, investing consistently, saving between 15 and 25% of your income consistently over time builds up to some major dollars. Check out some of my ETF reviews. You'll see the returns. Next, number 5. These self-made millionaires that replied to this survey called out they took advantage of employer benefits. Things like employer retirement match, low-cost disability insurance, HSA plans if they thought that would work for them, legal services, and of course, I shouldn't underscore this at all. If you work for a company that has an employee stock purchase program, if you could put in your budget and get to the position to utilize that, that is paramount. Think of it this way. If your company shares are typically $100 a share and you get a discount by being part of the employee stock program, you could be buying those $100 shares at $90 because you get a 10% discount. That's a 10% gain just on the purchase. And you can do that automatically through your employer program. So a lot of this, again, these are employer benefits that you work up to taking advantage of. You take advantage of these things over the long term can build up to some serious dollars. The number 6 habit, awesome. They did not try to keep up with the Joneses or their neighbors. They had a long-term plan, and they were not worried about trying to keep up with others, not following the latest gadgets or chasing after new cars or needless, frivolous things. The number 7 item is they utilize tax deductions to their benefit. And simple things like, for example, 401k, you have the option of doing a before tax or an after tax. Now, the before tax could help you lower your taxable liability, but remember, by doing a before tax contribution, when you retire, those withdrawals will be taxable. Your employer matches, of course, before tax, so that will be taxable. Then from there, also, in certain states, these individuals took advantage of college funding and college savings plans. In certain states, college savings plans is an actual deduction on your state tax return. And they also took advantage of healthcare savings plans. Again, utilizing some of the basics of the things that are available to you. A lot of these things are available to everyday people. These are not special things available to special individuals. These are available to almost many employees. Now, not all employers provide a 401k, but if your employer does not provide a 401k or you're a self-employed individual, we highly recommend, and working with a financial advisor, it might be really advantageous to your advantage to open up a self-directed 401k. It's some paperwork, depending on which firm you go to, but it is worth it. Why? Because that self-directed 401k, first off, if you're self-employed, you have a much higher limitation on how much you can contribute. It's not $23,000. It's actually much higher. And then from there, on top of that, you have a full breadth of investment options. So a lot of times employer program 401k will have limited options and typically all mutual funds. And it's not a bad thing, but of course, they do that to control costs and make it efficient for both the employer and the employee, right? But a self-employed person, you have access to the whole entire array of options provided by the investment firm. And so you can have access to both mutual funds and ETFs and even single stocks if that's what you want to invest in. Of course, you should do a lot of research before you do this and work with a professional. But again, this is to call out. They utilize these tax deductions, the basics that are available to you. And that includes, one more time, retirement plans, home mortgage interest on your tax return, charitable contributions, college funding. So remember, as you're paying for college, that's actual tax deduction. You get like a 1099-E, I believe. And when you're saving for it, for a child or a dependent, you could do it like a 529 or a Coverdell or educational IRA of some form. And then there's also healthcare savings. And those, back to those college savings accounts, those are investments, but those college savings accounts in certain states, that allows for a state tax deduction of the dollar amount you contributed that year. The number 8 item, these self-made millionaires, they looked for other income streams. And they did some of the typical things. It's not super exotic stuff here. They had an investment portfolio, sometimes outside of their 401k and their IRA because they had excess money, or they saved up and they put a nice healthy down payment on a rental property, which allowed them to start to develop passive income. As the rental property matures and you paid off that mortgage, you could have a really nice passive income from that. Or if they didn't want to deal with the idea of having renters, they invested in REITs, that's real estate investment trust. And you could do that in a brokerage account. So REITs have a rate of return that have become more and more attractive over the last decade or 2 decades. Why? Because they become better managed and they become more and more efficient. That's another way, again, to have rental properties without actually dealing with tenants. Also, sometimes they had multiple properties. So again, they worked their way to have multiple streams of incomes, or they turned their hobbies into a passion that they got paid for. They're doing weekend things. And this is ways to save more money, to invest more, and enjoy life more. So again, these self-made millionaires, they found ways to make money outside of their 9-to-5 jobs. The number 9 item that the article calls out is, in many cases, these individuals decide to save for their kids' college. Now, this one, as I always talk about when it comes to college savings plans, this is a big preference play. It is up to you. And generally speaking, it's great to save for your child's education, whether it be college or some type of private school. Cool. But don't do that in lieu of your own retirement. So if you have to choose yourself, because you know you're going to retire And it's not a guarantee that your kid's going to graduate. And there's programs and kids could apply for scholarships. So again, number 9 is a preference thing. But in this case, the study showed that a lot of these individuals did decide to save for their child's college, kids' college through 529 plans and other educational plans. And again, it's great. And this is a big preference thing. But in certain states, just as one last time reminder on this, certain states 529s do allow for a tax credit. Now the number 10 habit, as we wrap up this review, just got to call it out. These self-made millionaires were not afraid to seek advice. They knew when to call it quits. They sought advice when they needed, and they worked to stay informed. So they were probably avid readers and avid, let's talk about that lightly. That could be 2-3 financial books a year. But they were paying attention. They were very intentional, and they were watching what they were doing, and they were looking at their quarterly statements. So they were not afraid to seek advice and watching their quarterly statements. And guess what? They stayed intentional, and over time they became millionaires. Hope you enjoyed the review. So much more videos to come. Talk to you soon. Okay, now let's do a quick recap. 10 common money habits of self-made millionaires. First off, they avoided debt. Other than a mortgage, they avoided debt as much as possible. Why? Because when you have too much debt, it stops you from investing consistently, paying off your mortgage, or even enjoying life. So these millionaires really stayed focused on their spending plan and their budgets, and they avoided debts. Second, they bought cars, and they bought cars not by leasing. So they would buy cars, ride them till they died, and they avoided leases like the plague. Third, they had an emergency fund. And let's go over it one more time. They had at least 1 month when they were in debts, and then after they were out of debts, so other than mortgage debts, they built that fund up to 3 to 6 months. And that allowed them to do number 4. That allowed them to invest consistently. And what did they invest consistently in? Many things. Called out in number 5, probably 401k, maybe even IRA. So in number 5, it calls out they took advantage of employer benefits such as 401k, getting that match, HSAs, insurance provided by their companies, legal services provided by their company, and even employee stock programs, ESPPs. And again, that's basically when you buy your company's stock at a discounted price. Number 6, these individuals, these self-made millionaires, they did not try to keep up with others. They had a game plan. They were trying to achieve their goals. And yes, from time to time, they did treat themselves to things that they wanted. But that does not mean that they were focusing on trying to keep up with everyone else, whether it be something they saw on TV or in a movie. They were focused on achieving their goals and living their life, and they did not worry about others. And so they were able to always consistently focus on achieving their financial and personal goals. 7, they utilized tax deductions. Again, the article calls out some basics of 401k, home mortgages, interest, paying for college, educational costs. Again, that kicks a statement to you. I think it's a 1099-E. And then from there, also saving in things like college savings plans, which also in certain states is a tax deduction. Other things that they did, number 8, they looked for other income streams. And again, this could have been through investment portfolios in a general investment account, or they were doing high yield savings accounts, or they were even doing things like having investment properties, or they had REITs in their investment accounts. Again, these are all great ways to build up wealth. Number 9, some individuals felt it necessary. Again, this is a big preference one. They were saving for their kids' college early. Now, I just want to call out, I think I've actually done this in one of our reviews. You start saving for a kid's college really early. Start saving when they were just born or 1 or 2 years old. Over 15, 16, 17 years, you'd be amazed what a small amount per month will build up to. So again, these individuals started early. And in number 10, they stayed informed and they sought advice. When they got lost, they sought advice, whether it be from a financial advisor, a tax expert, a legal expert, whatever they needed. There's so many experts out there, but it's important to know when you need these experts and when it's like, well, maybe next year, right? And they probably seek this advice to do other things like protect themselves by having a will and things of that nature. Hope you enjoyed the article review. This was a lot of fun. And you too can take on some of these habits and become a millionaire. Hey, thanks for staying to the end. This video is brought to you by the Next Chapter team. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a comment. Please also like, subscribe, and share it for your friends and family. This will help the channel reach out to more people just like you. We offer one-on-one coaching where we work with everyday people to determine a clear path to achieving their financial goals. This includes things like budgeting to reduce debts, planning for big purchases, and even learning how to build wealth with the tools that you have readily available to you. If you're interested, please see our link below to schedule a free call with our team. That's right, it's a free 30-minute call with the team. Also, check out our affiliate links for high yield savings account. This is a great place for the saving up for those big purchases and your emergency fund. Thanks, and see you in the next video.